Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of LonsTV. Want to talk today about a new web series. It is called Stacks. We're we're 6 episodes in out of 11 total episodes that are going to be made, so we're right in the middle of it. And I like reviewing shows when you come in the middle, because it gives me enough time to watch a couple episodes and see if it's any good or not, and if I should recommend it, and then you're sort of coming in time to catch the end of the show when it gets posted. So I think it's the right, I try to aim for this amount of time into the show. Unfortunately, with this show, I'm not really sure I can recommend it. I wanted to like it. It has an intriguing premise, and the first episode sort of had me, but I don't know. It really lacks something that I didn't really feel compelled to keep going. I watched all 6 episodes that currently exist because I wanted to, review it here on the show, but I'm not sure I really feel compelled enough that I will check back. Whereas the last couple shows that I've been talking about, like Baristas and Self-Centered and a few more before that, I always want to go back and see what's going on and sort of try to keep following the story. This one was written and created by a woman named Kathy Forti. It stars Jackie Tohn as a struggling writer named Cali Cavaleri. She's working for tabloids in the beginning, writing an alien baby story, she said. So like Weekly World News kind of stuff, I guess. And so the first episode, she, through a convoluted series of goings-on, steals a dead man's phone, and then taking that phone into the library, she discovers a portal to an interdimensional repository of knowledge called the Library of Truth. And then the rest of the episodes are really like, there is some sort of shadowy group called MINERVA that wants to get at her because now she can access this library she's not supposed to, and she keeps going back to the library, and she's trying to figure out what's going on to like turn it into a tabloid journalism story, like in the hopes that it'll get her writing career somewhere. So she's investigating and, of course, getting deeper and deeper into this conspiracy. Although 6 episodes in, we really don't have a very clear idea of what the library actually is. And I also have to say, one of the problems with the show is there isn't this sense of follow-through on the premise. Like, the premise is she's a journalist, and now all of a sudden she has access to this library of, like, all knowledge of the universe in history, and like you think that's a good idea for a show, because then she can use all of this crazy metaphysical information to like write things and get involved in these mysteries, but it really doesn't work, because she goes to the library and then it basically refuses to tell her anything. She'll be like, what's going on, who's Minerva? And they'll be like, well, I can't tell you that. There's like a woman named the record keeper who is British, because of course she is, and yeah, it's just like, I cannot tell you any of that information, you have not been here enough times. And it's like, well, then what's the point of having like the Library of Truth as the main location for the show if it can't tell you any truth? And she has to just then end up investigating through very traditional like investigative journalism, Veronica Mars style techniques, like let me hack into the DMV database and see what that license plate, that address is, blah blah blah. So it's a lot of that stuff, which feels like when you've started with a location called the Library of Truth, you expect that it's going to be a little different, it's going to be weird and trippy, and she's going to get all this crazy information, and then she has to figure out how to use it, and that's not really what happens at all. It really kind of gets off on an awkward foot, to be honest, from the first episode, just because the setup itself doesn't make a ton of sense. The whole show starts, the first scene, she is driving into this parking lot, and she parks, and then, she drops a bunch of stuff, because she's like a mess, she's an adorable mess, and she, like, bends down to, like, pick up her stuff, and then she sees the car next to her. On the other side of that, there is a dead man, there is a dead body, and he's got weird, like, vampire teeth marks in his neck, like he was bitten by Vlad Dracul, or whatever. So, you would think she's a reporter, and she sees this right in front of her, and she steals his cell phone off the ground, inadvertently, I guess, although it's clear she, picks it up and pockets it, so it's not clear how she would be doing that accidentally, and then she literally takes off. She just runs away from the scene, because she's urgently got to go to the library. She says right into the camera, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but she says, well, I don't have time for this, I got to go work on this story, so sorry, dead guy, and then she runs off, and it's like, well, I don't buy that at all. First of all, what reporter goes to do research at a library in 2011? It's like the whole notion of, I gotta write this tabloid story about an alien baby, so I'm gonna go to the library. It's just like, well, no, you would be interviewing sources, or somebody must have seen an alien baby, if that's what her story's about. You wouldn't possibly, what is she gonna look up at the library? That just was so, out of time. Like, if you made this in the 80s, that would make some sense. But, like, in 2011, everyone just use it's the internet. You don't need a library. Second of all, she's a tabloid journalist. There's a body on the ground with teeth marks in it. Like, that's a story. Like, they would make that up to be in, like, with Twilight being as big as it is. And, I mean, why wouldn't you write that? That's obviously the story. You don't want to run off to go write another story from the body with teeth marks in it. And third, she says into the camera again, like, I can't hang out here because I got all these unpaid parking tickets and I'm sure the cops will haul me in. It's like, but it's obviously a much worse offense to not tell the cops when you find a dead body. The whole scene is just so bizarre. Like, what person would see, like, a dead body on the ground, park right next to it, and then just, like, run to the library like nothing happened? It gets the whole show off on this, like, you're dubious even before the, like, real sci-fi setup is even introduced. Which is not great. It's not good when that happens. Speaking about, I said she says things right into the camera. There's two different ways of having her narrate her own story. Callie will break the fourth wall and talk directly to you. So she'll be talking to this guy like, can you believe this guy? What the hell's going on? I just got to figure out what's going on with my story. And as well, she does voiceover. And sometimes she'll actually interrupt. Like, the voiceover will be interrupted by her speaking directly to you into the camera. So it'll be like, yep, that was my day. What a weird thing to be going on. I mean, really, right, folks? Like, it's like, I've never seen, it occurs to me that I've never seen that before because it's very confusing. It's like you're hearing voices. It's like you're hearing her voice projected all around you, and it makes the show very, like, insular, like it's this soliloquy by this one woman, and I would think, why wouldn't you give her, like, a friend or character? Eventually the show does introduce a librarian named Zach who helps her and becomes her foil, and then it makes a lot more sense, but in the first few episodes she's alone, and they obviously can't figure out how to move the story forward, so she's just constantly talking to herself, either to the camera or just to herself or in this voiceover, and it's just way too much, and it's obviously being used as a crutch, which they don't even need. Like, the first two episodes, the storytelling is straightforward enough, and they're doing a good enough job visually that you really don't even need to hear the voiceover. You would get what's going on. It's like, finds a body, finds this phone, transported to a magical dimension, reappears. Like, all that you could handle basically without dialogue. I think maybe that was, like, too bold a choice. They didn't want to go down that road. They wanted talking, but instead it doesn't work very well at all. Speaking of the visuals, it looks okay. I mean, there's a lot of different locations and there's a lot of driving, and all of that is handled really well. My one thing is it's a very overexposed, and I know I sense on some level that was intentional, that it all looks like super white and like there's not a lot of detail to any of the backgrounds, but it gets really overwhelming. Like, there's bright, and then there's, like, I can't see the definition of anything in the background because it's so, like, there's so much white light in the background. It all looks like it was shot in, like, heaven or something. So that is not great. Otherwise, visually, I think that's probably its best feature, is that there's so much, like, location shooting and kind of, difficult shots to get, and, it all holds together pretty well, except that it's often sort of overexposed. The last thing I'll talk about is the momentum is a little slack. It picks up. By the time you get to episode 3 or 4, the narrative kind of takes over, which is great, but it's definitely slow to get going in the beginning. If it sounds like it's intriguing to you and you'd like to check it out, I urge you to stay tuned. The first two, there's the first episode, which has a lot going on, and then the second and the third episode are basically just going back and reiterating what already happened. And in fact, that in the introduction to every episode, they have, like, previously on Stacks, and you can tell there's a problem because even in episode 5, they're showing things that happened in episode 1 as, like, the previously on, because they haven't followed up on it yet. And it's like, if you go 4 or 5 episodes without following up on a major plot thread, that means you're taking too long to establish your story. So, kind of a negative take on Stacks. I hate coming down negatively because it's a lot of work to put these things together, and it is not a lot of work to put one of these things together that I'm doing right now. So it feels like a little mean-spirited to me, but I gotta be honest, I gotta tell you guys what I think. So that's today's LonsTV. I'll put where you can check out Stacks if you're still curious below. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you all next time.